Hey guys, I wanted to talk about probably one of the movies that changed my life that I'm really hoping someday gets a sequel. Um, just the fact that this is probably, I will say, if any of you that love comedy movies and you haven't seen this one, it's okay. We all live in America. We all love media. But those comedy galore, or what do you call comedy glamorous people out there that enjoy a good comedy movie, this is a movie that if you have not seen it, you have to watch it. I would say if anybody has seen a comedy movie featuring Will Ferrell or John C. Riley, or if you've seen a movie with them both in that same movie, this is a movie that they star as stepbrothers, meaning that they have they have so one of them so the thing is Will Ferrell plays one of the stepbrothers. Um he has his mom. Um his mom is divorced but remarries John C. Riley's dad in the movie, but they end up making love at a conference meeting. And both Dale, so in the movie, Will plays the stepbrother named Brendan, and John C. Riley plays the stepbrother named Dale. Um, and It is one of the most probably relatable comedy movies out there that I know I personally can relate to. Somebody who just wants to have fun and has that kid at heart still in me. And loves to laughs at the most ridiculous. I would think, yes, people may not think 100% things like that are funny, but things that can be, I guess, it depends on your level of humor. So really, it depends on your nature. It depends on that person if they find humor like that funny. Because people's humor, you only know your own humor. Um, Now this movie is a great example of two stepbrothers that kind of don't get along at first, but then they start to realize they get along. But it is a great movie. I Those of you that have not seen it, I know many of you who follow Will Ferrell's comedy movies, John C. Riley's movies, because he's also, so both him and Will Ferrell have had serious roles in movies, not so much based off of comedy. Um, I will say a lot of the movies, Will Ferrell is like the anchor, or was it Anchorman, Elf. Um, he's been in many movies. He was the villain in the Barbie movie. Um, but there were there I will say I know, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I feel like, and they were also, so same actors were both in the movie Telehaga Nights, which I know my buddy Andrew has seen that movie. I've seen it too, but if you want a straightforward comedy, laugh out loud movie with those two, Step Brothers is the one that comes to mind. Even though Talladega Nights is funny, because it's also about racing too. So I would say a combination of both. But if you want a straight up comedy movie with those two, Step Brothers is your movie. Because not only does Will Ferrell have Dale as his stepbrother, but there's also a guy in the movie named Derek. Derek is Will Ferrell's biological brother that unfortunately focuses way too much on his business and his family. And the thing is that, he wants to kind of ruin Will Ferrell's kid at heart thing, but turns out to be a decent guy towards the end. The movie is, I will say, for me, that was like when I saw that movie, the first time I saw that movie, I was hooked, and I said, the person in my life that is my older brother, maybe not a biological brother since I never had a biological sibling in my life. A good example of this movie is definitely me and Andrew. Because Andrew was always a big brother to me in the sense of our humor being I wouldn't say even off balance, but how we humorize each other back and forth. But I would say one of the best, I would say, loving memories I've had of Andrew. I would say it was, I mean, I don't know how Andrew would state it if he was in the room, but I know for me, there was a time, and this was actually during one of my performances I was part of. Andrew and I had kind of had a little hard time, but he had thought at one point that I had betrayed him, or that I he had thought that I bet or that I he thought that he betrayed me. That so no, not me betraying him, but him betraying me. Because there was that big gap where I was rehearsing for the Mickey Sawada show. That me, Malachi, Ian, and Abby were all part of, and I remember that quite well because Andrew was at that show with his parents, um, and he had come to me. He said, "Good luck, man," and as we were getting on the stage to perform, I saw Andrew in the crowd. He was tearing up, and I after we because we only had done that one song with Miki Sawada. We only collabed one song with her. That's it. And she's a traveling musician, so she has this big, ginormous grand piano that she takes in a U-Haul and goes around the U.S. and other countries and performs. But the connections I've made with people over the years, especially in Portland, I would say the most effective one that has led to I will say a brotherhood is never destroyed, because I mean, it does suck that Andrew and I do not go the same days anymore, and I still to this day never reflect or put the blame on him for not coming on Fridays or not returning on Fridays. And I honestly, I would never speak negatively about Andrew, and I honor him. I honor him as much as I should when we don't go the same days. Does the connection, is the connection more limited? Yes. The answer is yes, it is more limited. Um but Step Brothers is not so much a movie that has meaning to me, but it shows of how two brothers might not always agree on similar terms, or might, as I said, not get along at first. But the way Andrew and I engineer a brotherhood between him and I, because the thing is, I have different things with different people when it comes to a brotherhood. They're all different and unique. But one thing about Andrew and I is that he shows me cool stuff, I show him cool stuff that I think he might like, and he shows me things that he thinks I might like. And I really believe, and I feel like the Pride Festival that is coming, our fourth year. So it's not next Friday, it's the Friday after. Um, wait, actually, scratch that. It is next Friday. So this Friday is our last rehearsal. So yes, scratch that. It is next Friday. Our performance, unbelievably, is next Friday on the 17th in Augusta. But I'm very much excited. Um, but many times in my life have I ever wanted to put a dream to reality? Absolutely. But the most unique connection Andrew and I have, and the most unique story Andrew and I have, goes way back before I started Listen Up. And that was when Andrew and I attended the same concert. And I remember getting tickets for this concert back in 2019, the year I graduated high school. But my mom surprised me with tickets to go see Nickelback and Skillet. Well, Skillet opened up for Nickelback. And that's a very special, I would say, really existence of Andrew and I not knowing each other, but we were there the same night. Um, but I will say that is one of the most significant events Andrew and I had, where we didn't know each other, but we were, I mean, it's crazy to think about. We were at the exact same place at the same time, maybe not sitting near each other, but we were in the same area, building. Even though Andrew was on the lawn and I was in one of the and I was in one of the we were in the pavilion because my mom, so I do remember that year my mom didn't take me because she had cancer at the time. She couldn't, there would be many times where she didn't feel well, and that was one of those nights. And she was like, she's like, I need somebody to take you. um and She had her friend Robin take me. So Robin ended up taking me to go see Nickelback and Skillet. Um, do I know? I mean, the thing is, we didn't stay for the whole show. I wanted to, but I think, I mean, as I said, at least what I focus on is I went. If I missed half the show, it sucks I did. That I would have stayed for all of it. I mean, honestly, did my mom and I kind of decide that? I will say my mom and I had very limited time to kind of map out who would take me. But the thing is, my mom's friend at the time was not big into concerts. But I do know at the same time she was also going through a hard time as well. And I will not mention her name on here, but she got worse over time, and my mom and many people don't know if she's still alive. Her friend that took me to the Nickelback show. I mean, we're all hoping that she is still living and breathing, but there was a brink of light and there was a brink of darkness. The brink of light was her taking me, offering to take me, but even after the whole concert, there was times where my mom didn't even get any phone calls from her or at all or anything. But one of the many things I have learned in my life through seeing people go through what they go through is you can work extremely hard through college, through job opportunities, and I mean, there's a lot to talk about here because my mom, none of, and I would say nobody, absolutely no one, knows the desperation of regaining connections, how hard they are. But unrelated about another person my mom is extremely close to, it was I often state to myself every day that I don't have friends. But I don't I mean, I used to sit there and be like, I don't have friends. Well, you know what's much worse than not maybe having anybody is losing your best friend through somebody they live with who's incredibly abusive. But my mom had a best friend before I was born named Stefan. Actually, I was a baby when when um when Stephanie was still around. But Stephanie was my mom's best friend. She went to college with her, and Stephanie was incredibly intelligent. As my mom would state to you all about Stephanie, she was her IQ was extremely high, and she was going for something huge at graduation, at her college graduation. She was going to become a teacher. And she actually was going to be a teacher of a school, but exactly, and my mom, knew that, like, the aim for Stephanie with that. But the thing is, what really, I would say one of the biggest things Stephanie did was she worked and worked and worked for what she wanted to achieve. But just like anything in life, the more work you put on yourself, sometimes it can be incredibly stressful. And Stephanie wanted to have somebody in her life. Now, this guy she was with was very much controlling, as my mom would say. And the thing is that this guy controlled Stephanie enough where, yes, she graduated high school or college like she was working incredibly hard to become a teacher, and this guy she was with at the time abused her so much and basically destroyed that. Ruined it for Stephanie, ruined Stephanie's life. But the thing is, Stephanie also could have walked away from this guy and said, "See you later, screw you." But I talk about friendships, and I talk about not abusing anybody, not abusing of a connection with a person. Whether it's your girlfriend, it's your boyfriend, it's a sibling, it's a friend, a family member. And this guy Stephanie was with, he was bad. I mean, his behaviors were unprofessional. Unfortunately, though, for Stephanie, is she struggled to get out of it. And I can't remember if she had committed suicide or she took some really heavy duty drugs, but I think a lot of it had to do with getting out of this. She wanted to escape, but Stephanie probably was incredibly stuck with, if I escape, I would get hurt. Or if I escaped, then I would be leaving him. Now, and that's the thing, back then when my mom and Stephanie went to college together, Stephanie was so intelligent. She knew what she wanted to do. And she was almost there. She was more than halfway there. She got her degree in teaching. And that's the thing, is this guy she was with also, I felt like, definitely cheated on her. But there is one good person that still is alive, and that is family, biological family to Stephanie. And I feel like if I were to interview him, one of my first questions to him would be, how tight were my mom and your sister? But it's actually Stephanie's brother, Steve. Now, Steve is a guy I've met many times. Do I see him as much anymore? Not really. I would say I run into him from time to time, or at least when I see him. But I know where he works too. I know because he has a couple of restaurants called Bees Cafe, same business, but he owns both of them. And Steve, I know always approaches my mom and that's the thing is Steve was there when my mom was real best friends with Stephanie. And, that's the thing. The guy Stephanie was with, Steve, I feel like, was at least one of the supports Stephanie had. Maybe not to get out of this relationship, but when you have a sibling, sometimes people may not think so. An older sibling or a sibling that will provide from incoming attacks from somebody. Steve loves Stephanie. And I don't need to say that because I didn't see them fully connect, but I know Steve deep down, you know, and he's known my mom for years. In my eyes, friendships, relationships, work, but they only work when people in that circle are treating you and you're treating them like they matter in your circle. Because when you're with somebody, you're pursuing something bigger. You're working towards something. The work can be a lot, but just know what to do in ways to cope with if you're overwhelmed with working or parts of your job. Sometimes going to people, or at least it's hard. It is extremely hard. And I know exactly going to the church with my mom every weekend. She she does it and I help her out with it because her and I are just like we're the duo, but we're also very kind-hearted to support a community that may not put 100% of effort into a community. And that's, I feel like, what this nation is struggling so hard to do is they want to put the money, but where's that money really going? Is it going to other countries to to enhance billionaires where it should be going somewhere else? But the more people, I personally feel like that this church isn't really running as well. I mean, yes, the pastor moved on, but and my mom's always helped many communities out, and I often would go and help her. I remember for years she worked at the food pantry in Lovell because it wasn't just Freiburg that I had a life in, but Lovell was another place I had education. Basically, I went to an elementary school there for 6 years, maybe 5 years. But the school districts I went from, most of them, yes, were in Freiburg, but one was in Lovell. And then, of course, my high school years were at Future Builders in Raymond. But the thing is, when somebody wants to put somebody in submissive, in a submissive, controlling behavior, I don't. I I struggled so hard with wanting to be accepted, with being loved, and I didn't want that to lead to submissive behavior, which it didn't. But people often stated that I needed to work harder at that. They didn't state to me at all that it was submissive. They said, I mean, I would say many times they've said it's excessive, using the terms as compulsive, relying on different definitions of control, compulsive control. But instead of completely ignoring those words, or those words, I found the definitions. And I have a journal right here. The journal I wrote all of this down on. It's not even freaking half. It's half full, but a lot of that was through writing these definitions down and understanding what they mean. Because when somebody uses a word, or they describe a word to me, sometimes it's a two-part word. It could be something control. And sometimes I'll say, you used a word that came after a word I already know. So sometimes, even without asking that person, which I know they would communicate that meaning with me, I'll pull out my phone and I'll kind of draw it down my own words what that definition means. If you don't know something, sometimes you can't rely on somebody to give you the answer. But when you have any disagreement with somebody, you make sure you fix it. If you don't, things like that are going to happen. Did Stephanie walk away? No. If she had better handle on her role, if she had better handle on her addiction, or not, maybe not even addiction, but it sounds like she used that as pain to get away from something. But still, even if I wasn't a user of drugs, I would have still walked away. if I felt that I was being submitted into control, the message is there. Am I going to listen to a man in this nation right now who's doing exactly that? Nope. Because I know there's people out there far more greater that don't pull all of this fraud level BS. I mean, him going to Iran and Iraq saying of how good of a country they are, not mentioning anything about the United States of America. Or no, that he wanted to. That's right, he wanted, what was it? America to be like Iran and Iraq. And I said, you're the one who stated that you want people to love America. To me, that's a full on bullshit dictator act. Or that's how a dictator acts. Somebody who thinks about themselves. What I will do is state that if I visit a country and somebody does something within that country that might be questionable, I'm not going to say anything. It's not my country. I'm going to let whoever is from that country address it, or address to that person. That's not allowed